Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to the YouTube channel on Narcissism. So, how do you know when it's the final discard? I mean, it sounds a little bit like a horror film, right? The final discard. But how do you know when it is the final discard? The time when there will be no more hoovering, that they're not coming back anymore. Done. And I'm going to give you the unsatisfying answer of, you don't really. Now, as long as the narcissistic person is well supplied, and this doesn't matter if it's an intimate relationship, it doesn't matter if it's a family relationship or work relationship, as long as that narcissistic person is well supplied, they probably won't bother you again, right? They're certainly probably not going to hoover you. As long as they've got supply, they're almost like a person whose belly is full at a buffet. They're probably not going to reach for any more food. When that hunger comes back, conceivably they might. But let's talk a little bit about what the discard phase is about. We know that the narcissistic relationship cycle kind of has that natural kind of a history of the idealization and the seduction and the sort of the intensity of the love bombed phase. Once the narcissistic person kind of has you where they want you, they sort of, if you will, secured your narcissistic supply, the butterfly under glass, as I put it, that's where we start getting into the devaluing phase. Gaslighting shows up, manipulation shows up more often, there's more critical comments, you might be dealing with more of their anger. A lot of people will say at this point, what did I do wrong? Because enough good stuff happened potentially, or enough seeming perception of connection happened in the early phase of the relationship, and you still see the narcissistic person kind of showing up as a normal person in various areas of their life, that you're confused and you're wondering, what did I do? This has got to be me, because they seem to be getting along with everyone else. That's the devaluing phase. And a lot of people in that phase feel rejection. They feel like it's been personalized. They feel as though they've done, they must be the one who has done something wrong. And they feel it, even though they recognize the narcissistic person is toxic, they definitely feel like that they are, again, it's sort of a sense of like you're nothing to them. The discard phase, though, this is where it gets to. This is where it gets tricky, because discard doesn't always mean that they're breaking up with you. It's really as though they're bringing at best their B game to you. They have almost no interest in you. They are completely, almost seemingly disconnected from you, except to get their needs met. Was the meal on the table? All of that, right? So the discard phase, a lot of things can happen at the discard phase. They may disengage from you. They may withdraw from you. They may withhold from you. They may give you the silent treatment. They may cheat on you. They may substitute any number of activities. They may not even just be cheating. They may be they constantly be working. Whatever it is that they're just sort of, they've pulled away. They're absolutely not interested in you. And then in the discard phase, you may also find yourself pulling back too, because there's not a lot of there. But as we know, in a goodly percentage, not all, but in a goodly percentage of cases, the discard phase may be followed by the hoover. Now, the discard may be followed by the hoover when the narcissistic person is, if their new supply doesn't work out. The discard may be followed by the hoover when they recognize it's really inconvenient to live without you around because you did a lot of stuff for them. The hoover might, I think I misspoke that. The hoover phase may follow the discard is what I meant. And then the hoover phase may also follow the discard when the narcissistic person, for example, is going through a divorce with you, and they don't want to pay out all that money. And they're like, oh, there's this thing called community property, and I'm going to have to give you money. So they may come. It's not always because they're so, oh my gosh, I miss you so much. That's the fantasy that the narcissistic person has a wake-up call, but that they're going to come back. The hoovering cycles can happen for a while. And in fact, a lot of really toxic narcissistic relationships can be in this perpetual love bomb, devalue, discard, hoover cycle that goes on and on and on. And there's a lot of volatility and breaking up and making up and just sort of, it's almost like the relationship almost becomes addicted to this cycle of starting anew, as though the narcissistic person can only get connected to someone if there's lots of new novelty love bombing, then they'll always get to discard. But what is the final discard? What does that look like? I mean, I would say you're not going to know until one of you drops dead at one level, right? Because then there's no way they can hoover you back. But the final discard implies a couple of things. The final discard might really imply that the narcissistic person really moves into a very permanent new structure. They may get married to someone else for a very, and that's it. And they're sort of caught up in that whole new universe. It could be that the narcissistic person, now in some cases, it may be their hand may be forced. There may literally be a restraining order or something. Let's just take that piece out of it. In some cases, believe it or not, some narcissistic people feel so much shame for the Hoover cycle, for the almost feeling like they can't pin your supply down permanently, that it brings up shame, that they actually finally cut bait once and for all and feel like this is actually a bad look for them. And so they don't interact with it anymore. But the final discard happens, though, honestly, most consistently when the new supply that the narcissistic person literally takes their life in a brand new direction. So let me give you a scenario here. Thinking about a story of a person I knew, malignant, vulnerable narcissistic guy, got into a long-term relationship with a narcissistic woman. There's a fair amount of volatility in the relationship. He had cheated. He took a lot of advantage of the woman. And then finally, in one of his times of cheating, this time she caught him. She had hard evidence. He copped to it. And then he went off with the new woman. And then the relationship ended. That woman was convinced it was potentially the final discard. I'm like, it doesn't feel like the final discard. Then there was, she would hear from him, and then one day he hoovered her. And the hoover was long and gradual, but she had a lot of things he wanted: social status, resource, access to certain people. So he hoovered and he hoovered. And she tried to be careful, but he was a world-class hooverer and a world-class love bomber, and pulled the person back in. And again, this person was, the woman was very tentative, very careful, all of that. And then cheats on her again. And then he ghosts her and disappears. He surfaces back some months later, but he did not get in touch with her. She did try to reach him, like, what the hell's going on? How's it you just disappeared? Blah, blah, blah. And then she came to find out there was yet another new person, but that was a brand new person. And the new person was just a very, very, very good source of narcissistic supply. And so he then took up with the said new with the new person. And the new person was almost like a board game. That's the only way I could describe it. Many times when narcissistic people, they still sort of stay close to people connected to you, right? There's your world and there's still ties in there. Hoovering tends to happen when the narcissistic person doesn't break away from your world too much. Either they don't physically move away or move into a new group. In this case, the narcissistic person, when they took up in that new relationship, they went off into a very different social world, very, very different group of people that were forever going to keep him away from the original woman he kept being unfaithful with, and he kept trying to hoover back. That changeover into that new group, it's definitely not going to work out with this new woman either. This person has not changed. It's just going to take her a minute. She doesn't seem that smart. It's going to take this new woman a second to figure out exactly what's going on. But that'll probably fall apart too. But now he's been shunted into a new system. And almost like a little virus, that new system is where he'll find his new supply. He probably won't go back to the original person because basically he's found a whole new warehouse. Right? And in this new warehouse is all kinds of new unexplored supply that might bring all the stuff he wanted, the original woman, the status and all that other stuff. My point in saying that is that with this woman, the malignant, vulnerable narcissist and the original woman he cheated on, if that feels like the final discard. That because he moved into a new supply pool, as it were, he's going to find all his stuff there. And until that punts off into a new supply pool, that's how that's going to be for a while. So I think at best, that's what a final discard would look like. But as I always tell people who've been through narcissistic relationships, Never, ever, ever, ever discount the possibility that they may come around and hoover. Narcissistic people, in essence, keep people in some sort of weird storage closet in their brain. And when they need you for supply, whether it's the text in the middle of the night, hey, I was just thinking about you, or the odd email, or whatever you get, you're just going to have to get really good at deleting stuff, blocking it, and not engaging with it. But as hard as that final discard feels, and I know for a lot of people, the possibility, the hope was always there. One of the greatest moments in the life of somebody who's attempting to survive a narcissistic relationship is that final discard. Like I said, you probably won't know it until you're well into the future and can do, if you will, a final accounting. And a last piece on the final discard. That final discard also comes through a much healthier path. And that final discard can come when you get yourself and your life into a place where nothing could come in. In some cases, it could be you fall in love with a healthy person and build a healthy life with them. It could be that you get into meaningful and purposeful activity that so fills your heart that nothing could distract you from it. So really the final discard, in some ways, could be very well within your power. That when you become almost unhooverable, and the best way for that to happen is for you to become fully you, in love, in meaning, in purpose, and how you spend your time. And at that point, it becomes a final discard, not because the narcissistic person decided to discard you, but because there's no way into you in a way that's toxic or harmful. So hold on to that as a story of hope. Thanks again.